This is a 1990s legendary Kawasaki NSR 50. But looking at it right now, it looks like a piece of absolute junk. It's been rotting away in an abandoned garage for decades, completely covered in deep rust and dirt. The engine is seized, the frame is ruined, and honestly, most people would just throw this in the trash. But today, we are going to strip it down to the very last bolt and bring this Japanese mini sport bike back to life. Can we turn this pile of rust into a track beast? Let's find out. Before we can even think about fixing this bike, we need to blast away decades of baked-on mud and grease. Look at that thick layer of dirt. It's literally hiding the original parts. We're using a high-pressure washer and a heavy-duty degreaser to cut through the grime. Watching the mud melt away is honestly so satisfying, but it also reveals the real enemy beneath extreme, deep rust. Now that the frame is finally clean, we can clearly see the massive amount of damage we're up against. Time to scrub the rest and get this teardown started. Now that the bike is washed, it's time for the real challenge, the complete teardown. We're stripping this Kawasaki NSR 50 down to the bare frame. First, we need to carefully remove the cracked plastic bearings and the rusted fuel tank without breaking anything. Every single bolt on this 90s machine is completely seized and frozen with rust. We have to drench them in penetrating oil just to get them moving. Taking off the exhaust, disconnecting the wiring harness, and unbolting the old, worn-out rear suspension. And finally, we're dropping the heart of this beast, the seized two-stroke engine. It's heavy, it's filthy, but it's finally out. With every single part removed, all we have left is a heavily rusted frame. Next up, we're cracking open this ruined engine to see if it can even be saved. We are kicking off this project by tearing down what's left of this completely abandoned junk engine. Every single component is absolutely frozen with rust, covered in thick grease, and buried under decades of dirt. These bolts are put up a massive fight, but we aren't backing down. It takes a lot of brute force and plenty of penetrating oil just to get things moving. Cracking open these seized parts is tough, but it's the only way to see what's salvageable underneath all this wreckage. Let's get this thing completely stripped down. Next up, we need to get these wheels off. Both the front and rear tires are completely dry rotted, and the rims are covered in years of brake dust and deep grime. The axle bolts are stubborn, but with a bit of muscle, they finally break loose, sliding out the front axle, freeing the brake assembly, and dropping the rear wheel. Now, these rusty rims are ready for a complete makeover. We're fighting through the last few frozen fasteners, forcing these stubborn, heavily corroded pieces to finally release their grip. And just look at the absolute state of these junk components. They are completely caked in deep rust, pitted from decades of neglect, and choked with solid black sludge. Almost every surface is severely damaged, making it look like an impossible salvage job. But beneath all this ugly wreckage lies a classic machine. Now for the most satisfying part of the entire build, sandblasting. We're using a high-pressure sandblaster to completely strip away decades of rust and old paint, revealing the clean, bare metal underneath. It's like watching history get wiped clean in seconds. Now this frame is finally ready for some fresh paint. And just like that, a fresh coat of paint completely transforms the metal. Now, for the magic touch, we are spraying on a gorgeous, high-gloss candy purple paint finish. Look at that rich color, and just wow, the depth in this paint is absolutely insane. It looks like a mirror, completely smooth without a single scratch or defect. This frame went from absolute trash to absolute royalty. Now we need to separate the tire from the rim. This rubber has been sitting for decades, making it extremely stiff and hard to pry off. Using tire irons, we carefully pop the bead, pull out the ancient, dry-rotted inner tube, and fully slide the tire off. Finally, the bare rim is ready for restoration. Next up, we are taking the high-pressure sandblaster to the rusty rims and the completely blackened silencer. Years of exhaust heat, grease, and deep rust have caked onto this metal. But the sandblasting makes quick work of it, stripping it right down to the raw steel. Watch that satisfying transformation. Now these parts look brand new and ready for the next step. Now that the metal is bare and clean, we're spraying a fresh, heat-resistant coat of paint onto the silencer and the rims. Look at that instant transformation, and just look at that flawless finish. No more rust, no more grease. Just pure, clean metal that looks like it straight up came out of the factory. Time to wrap it up. We're sliding the brand new inner tube inside the fresh rubber and carefully mounting the tire back onto the beautifully restored rim. Now for the best part, hooking up the air compressor and inflating the tire to the perfect pressure. Look at it pop right into place. Absolutely flawless. See, and we're moving fast, cracking open the remaining housing and pulling out the last few internal gears. Every single piece has to come out right now. Now, we are hitting the engine with a high-pressure washer to blast away decades of caked-on grease and thick mud. Watch that dirt melt right off. Alright, now we are diving straight into the heart of the machine. It's time to tear down this entire engine, piece by piece. We are starting by backing out these stubborn, rusted bolts that haven't been touched in years. Some of these are completely frozen, but with a little bit of patience and the right tools, they finally start to give way. As we crack open the main casings, you can see the heavy buildup of old, degraded oil and sludge inside. Every single gear, shaft, and component needs to come out carefully so we don't damage anything. It's like solving a giant, oily puzzle, but documenting the exact placement of each part is crucial for the reassembly later. Finally, we are pulling out the piston and freeing up the crankshaft assembly. Looking closely, there's definitely some wear and tear here, but nothing we can't fix. Now that the entire engine is completely stripped down to bare metal, we are finally ready to get these parts cleaned up and prepped for the ultimate transformation. Now that the engine is fully stripped down, every single internal component needs a deep, thorough cleaning. We are scrubbing down the gears, covers, and casings to remove years of baked-on sludge and old oil residue. Every nook and cranny has to be absolutely spotless. Using a specialized cleaning solution and a lot of elbow grease, you can finally see the beautiful, bright metal hiding underneath all that grime. Getting these parts factory clean is crucial, not just for looks, but to make sure this engine runs like brand new when we put it back together. Now that the engine is fully stripped down, every single internal component needs a deep, thorough cleaning. We are scrubbing down the gears, covers, and casings to remove years of baked-on sludge and old oil residue. Every nook and cranny has to be absolutely spotless. Using a specialized cleaning solution and a lot of elbow grease, you can finally see the beautiful, bright metal hiding underneath all that grime. Getting these parts factory clean is crucial, not just for looks, but to make sure this engine runs like brand new when we put it back together. Now for the real magic. We are applying a green polishing compound to the buffing wheel to bring these levers back to life. Watch closely as the dull, oxidized metal instantly transforms into a brilliant, mirror-like shine. We have a major issue to fix. This plastic casing is badly cracked and missing a piece right here at the edge. To restore this defective part back to its original strength, we are using a hot stapler technique to melt and fuse the broken plastic back together. We carefully stitch across the crack with these heated metal staples, reinforcing the structure from the inside. It takes a steady hand, but once the plastic cools down around the metal, this seam will be rock solid and ready for some filler and sanding. Perfect. Now comes the most rewarding and satisfying part of the entire project, the grand reassembly. We are starting with a completely bare, factory-clean engine block, and every single piece going back inside has been meticulously restored or replaced with brand new components. First, we carefully seat the freshly polished crankshaft back into its bearings, making sure to apply a generous amount of assembly lube. This ensures everything stays protected during that crucial first startup. Next, the piston gets its new rings installed before we smoothly guide it down into the perfectly honed cylinder bore. With the core bottom end components safely locked in place, it's time to rebuild the gear train and timing system. Every single gear, spacer, and thrust washer must align exactly to the millimeter according to factory specifications. A single tooth off, and the entire timing will be ruined. You can see just how beautifully these shiny, clean gears mesh together now, compared to the oily, sludge-covered mess we started with. We are torquing down every internal bolt to its exact spec, using a thread-locking compound where necessary to make sure absolutely nothing backs out under vibration. Now we are laying down a fresh, high-quality gasket and prepping the mating surfaces for the main outer casings. Watching the heavy metal side covers slide smoothly over the locating dowels and snap perfectly into place is incredibly satisfying. We are hand starting all the brand new, corrosion-resistant bolts around the perimeter. When tightening an engine casing, it's crucial to use a crisscross pattern to distribute the pressure evenly. This prevents any warping and guarantees a flawless, leak-free seal that will last for years to come. Finally, we are bolting on the external accessories, including the starter mechanism, brackets, and the freshly painted valve covers. Every connection feels crisp, solid, and rock solid. Looking at this engine now, it is almost impossible to believe it's the same rusted, frozen piece of junk we dragged into the workshop. The mechanical transformation is officially complete, and this beautiful powerhouse looks like it just rolled off the factory assembly line. All that's left now is to drop it back into the frame and see if all this hard work pays off. To make sure this plastic repair holds up under stress, we are using a custom-made heating rig. This allows us to apply direct pressure right onto the seam while melting the plastic uniformly from the base. We are locking the panels tightly in place, letting the heat thoroughly fuse the two sections into a single, solid piece. Once this cools down, that joint is going to be incredibly strong. Now that all the bodywork is prepped and perfectly smooth, it's finally time for the paint job. We are setting up the spray gun to lay down an even coat of high-quality primer across the panels. Spraying requires a steady hand and a consistent distance to make sure the paint goes on completely flat without creating any heavy runs or thin spots. Watch how satisfying it is as the mist instantly covers up the bare patches, giving the entire surface a uniform, clean matte texture. This foundation coat is critical because it ensures our final color coat grips perfectly to the surface. We are meticulously covering every curve, angle, and recessed edge of these panels. It takes multiple light passes to build up the right thickness without rushing the process. Taking your time here makes all the difference between a sloppy DIY job and a professional, factory-grade finish. Once this layer completely flashes off and dries down, we'll give it a quick wet sand to knock down any dust nibs before we move on to the final shiny top coat. It's a lot of back and forth work, but looking at this smooth finish, it is absolutely worth it. And there you have it. Just take a look at all these components laid out together. Every single part has been completely reborn, polished, and beautifully finished. From a rusted, frozen mess to a collection of pure mechanical art, the transformation is absolutely mind-blowing. We are officially ready for the final assembly. All right, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. Every single piece has been cleaned, repaired, polished, and painted. And now, it's time for the ultimate final assembly. We are starting by carefully dropping our freshly rebuilt powerhouse of an engine straight into the freshly coated frame. It's a tight squeeze, and we have to be extremely careful not to scratch that beautiful new paint job. Once the engine mounts align perfectly, we are driving home the main heavy-duty chassis bolts and torquing them down to spec. Getting the core heartbeat of this machine securely locked in place feels absolutely incredible. With the engine mounted, we are moving on to the suspension, steering, and controls. We are routing all the brand new cables and wiring harnesses meticulously through the frame, making sure there are no pinches or tight spots. Next up, those beautifully polished brake and clutch levers go right onto the handlebars. Every pivot point is getting a fresh dab of grease to ensure a smooth, crisp mechanical feel. Sliding the front forks into place and securing the front wheel assembly brings the whole stance of the machine together. You can finally start to see the original silhouette returning, but this time, it's gleaming like a diamond. Now it's time to bring on the freshly painted body panels and fairings. Watching these smooth, flawless panels line up with the mounting tabs and snap perfectly into place is pure satisfaction. We are using brand new, corrosion-resistant hardware to secure everything, ensuring that not a single old, rusted bolt ruins the factory finish. Mounting the restored fender and alignment trim requires a steady hand, but the contrast between the deep color coat and the polished metal components is turning out to be an absolute masterpiece. Every single seam is tight, uniform, and perfect. To wrap up the assembly, we are hooking up the fuel lines, securing the fresh rubber tire and rim onto the rear axle, and double-checking absolutely every nut and bolt across the entire build. The level of detail poured into this transformation is just unreal. Looking at this gorgeous machine right now, it is completely impossible to believe it's the same abandoned, rusted piece of junk we brought into the workshop. Every hour of scrubbing, sanding, and welding has officially paid off. The mechanical rebirth is complete. Let's put it up, fire it up, and hear this beast roar back to life. The moment of truth has finally arrived. We filled up the tank, checked the fluids, and with one solid kick, this fully restored beast fires right up. Listen to that engine purr. It sounds absolutely incredible and runs as smooth as silk. We are taking it out on the road for its very first test drive to see how all that hard work translates onto the pavement. As we click it into gear and roll on the throttle, the power delivery is instantaneous and crisp. The suspension feels rock solid, absorbing every bump perfectly, and the steering is completely tight and responsive. There are no strange vibrations, no oil leaks, and absolutely no hesitation from the motor. Cruising down the road, it feels less like a restored machine and more like a brand new vehicle that just rolled off the showroom floor. Testing the brakes, those polished levers bite down perfectly, bringing us to a smooth, confident stop. Putting a vintage machine back on the road after it was left to rust away is the ultimate reward for any builder. Every single gear shift feels crisp,